Friend, enemy, or frenemy? How do Indians view the rise of China and its implications for India's rise? Join the conversation on this important topic by taking the China Challenge survey. The survey has been put together by researchers at the Takshashila Institution. Answer our 10 simple questions and let your voice be heard in shaping India's policy towards China. For more details, log on to www.takshashila.org.in or you can click on the link and take the survey in the show notes. Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. Today, I have with me Suman Joshi, and Suman and I, Shambhavi, are going to be discussing something very interesting. If anyone has heard me speak before, I usually take ethical stances on really controversial issues pretty easily. So I'm very pro gene editing, even gene editing in children. But the issue we are going to discuss today has me really flummoxed. Suman and I are going to be discussing menstrual leave. Very recently, the Supreme Court took a decision that it was not best placed to make a call on whether menstrual leave should be an agenda for national policy, basically citing that it was a policy decision that the government should be making. As two working women, Suman and I would like to weigh in on this idea of national menstrual leave, whether it is required. If yes, in what way should a menstrual leave policy be created? And what are the next steps? So before we start, Suman, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
So, Suman, you and I have both seen the petition, and this is not the first petition, obviously. The idea of having menstrual leave has been going around for a while. In India, Bihar is a state which actually has had menstrual leave for 2 days. So women can take a leave for biological reasons for 2 days a month. Several other countries have national menstrual leave policies. Various companies have menstrual leave policies. What do you think about this idea of mandating a menstrual leave policy?
Yeah. I have a lot of views on menstrual leave policy itself, what organizations should do. But from a national policy point of view, I think the Supreme Court was right in saying that it is not best placed to mandate or to issue some kind of overall policy directive to say that this should be done. Because it is clearly in the realm of the legislature or in the government, and they should actually come up with something like that. So towards that, I think the Supreme Court did right. Okay, now whether we should have a national policy designed for this, there are very divergent views and views that can inflame both sides of the argument, like in a really big way. Okay, but I think what we should, as policy people, what we could focus on is whether we need a national policy. That I think we are some distance away from, definitely, because I don't think the Overton window is right or is in its place for a national policy on this, because firstly, number of women in the workforce itself is so low. Two, even if you're talking about a national policy, it will be largely applicable to formal workforces. The informal workforce is largely left out of all of this. And considering the number of women in the informal workforce, it doesn't even touch them in any way to make any.
Yeah, and they are the ones who are actually doing physical labor, right? I mean, agriculture,
And they would need it the most.
all of those are extremely draining, and they will be probably the ones who will require it the most. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that way, I don't know if a national policy will help. But I just think the conversation on menstrual leave should move from being said that, okay, this is a topic that does not need much attention, to talking about it in ways that we could make assimilation or make it easier for women to work and to accommodate for all these differences in the workforce that we have, right?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who has never really suffered through her menstrual cycle, I mean, I can sympathize with the pain that other women go through. I can imagine it definitely. And I can see the need for women to take leave if they are in extreme debilitating pain. I think statistics show that about 20% of menstruating women do get a lot of intense pain, right? That makes them bedridden. And if you ask me straight up, that does it make sense that women who have this pain should be given leave? I definitely cannot say no. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a resounding yes. But whether that has to be part of a
The
national
policy.
policy
Mm.
or whether, as I said, there are some companies which have already come forward and said that we were going to put in menstrual leaves from data that I saw a few years ago. However, even women there were not taking the menstrual leaves with as much success as I think the companies would have hoped for. This could be that there is, I mean, if we cannot figure out that women will not be judged for taking leave, that the lack of work will not be held against them, etc. If they still feel that they're in a very competitive space where they have to work for all days, otherwise they'll be judged, then just putting in a leave might not be helpful.
Yeah,
So there are a lot of other fixes that I think we need to make to for a menstrual leave policy to actually work. And I like your framing, the fact that women, that whether the leave policy exists or not, that women who are menstruating should feel comfortable in their work environment, whether they're working from office or working from home, to be able to speak about their issues. I mean, if a man has a really bad headache, he will tell. So if a woman has really bad stomach cramp, she should be able to tell without worrying about the impacts of saying that.
yeah. It's also on the women. It's not so much. So when you have more women, that's when we are going to get. I think it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. When you have more women, you're going to get more people to talk about it, and you're going to get more people taking that leave, and all that happens around that. So I think, but even before we go there, if we can take a little bit of a historical view on this, in the sense that workplaces have largely been designed for men, okay, across millennia. So the normal has always been the man's needs, or whatever is the thing. Because we've had some women coming into the workforce in the last few centuries, now whatever is not a man's problem becomes an exception. So now we are looking at menstrual leave as an exception to the normal which is set by a man. Now, is that fair? First of
It's almost as if it's a benefit we are giving to women. It's a concession
all, yeah.
that we are giving to women, and that is not. I mean, if you're right, if we had a women-centric workplace, then this would have been a given.
Yeah, yeah. So if you look at it from that way, considering we are moving, I mean, we would like to move to a more uh, balanced workforce in terms of number of women in it, then I don't think this should be seen as an exception at all. It's just an accommodation of different needs of different people in the workforce, right? And we've always had these exceptions. Somebody in your team has a family issue, you are willing to make some kind of concession. Somebody in the team has a certain health issue, you're willing to make some concession. The problem with this comes because it is a large population. I mean, it's a relatively large population that will avail of this facility, and therefore should we document it as a policy in an organization? Should we make it as a formal or announce it as a formal policy? That is the question that we need to address. And if we have to do that, how can we do it the best way, so that firstly the organization's interests are not affected in a big way? Second, I mean, maybe firstly the person who is taking the leave is not affected or is benefited in this way. Two, the organization's interests have to be at the forefront. And three, how do you make it acceptable? How do you make it less judgmental from everybody around you? Right? Those are things that we need to actually iron out when we talk about framing a policy within an organization. Now, taking it up to the national level, um, I mean, it's hard to make one policy on a national level because, again, there'll be regional disparities. There are various other factors, cultural factors that come into place, right? So, what do you think? How do you think we should go about if we have to?
Yeah, I think with the national policy, obviously the other concern is also who will bear the cost. right? If we mandate it across, say, the government of India and all private sector, then people will obviously ask about who bears the cost, and that I think is unfortunate to an extent that people think that it's a cost.
Hmm.
That it's a cost that women's health should
That's
can
true.
be counted in terms of day hours lost, woman hours lost. Put it that
Hmm.
way. Because I think you're right. We are still coming to terms with the fact that this is normal woman physiology, is to be expected, and has to be accounted for in any job role, right? And you can see this happening, right? You can see people's main concern is that, oh, what if women feign being ill, having menstrual cramps when they don't? What if they use this to take holidays, etc.? Which I think is, it's just
I have not seen a single woman faint because nobody knows what it is to go through.
exactly. I mean, that is just like, for me, it's really weird that.
As someone who has gone through some part of it, like on and off, not regularly, but I don't think I would feign it for anything in the world.
Um,
I don't think anyone would feign it for anything in the world.
No. And I genuinely don't think anyone will fail it month after month to go on holiday or to get out of work. I mean, a woman is in a job because she wants to be in a job. She wants to do well. She is competing with people that she knows she has to keep on, keep ahead in the race. Most people are not there to get free pay. So,
Yeah, and a lot of women are not going to take it month on month regularly. Maybe there are a few who face it regularly, but I mean, we have to understand this whole phenomenon before we make these sweeping judgments about, oh, women will become lazy or anything like that, right? So
yeah.
there will be a large portion of women who will not take it month on month, but may take it once in a week. So then again, we just have to talk about how do we accommodate for this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I mean, that is fine, right? I mean, not as part of the actual formal labor force, but I've had people work for me at home as domestic workers
Domestic.
who have told me right up front, when I've been hiring them, that we are going to need those 2 weeks off, 2 days off, because we have debilitating pain and it's just physical work. And you understand that because, I mean, you're not going to cut 2 days' pay because of that, because that's just silly. It is, yeah, normal physiological functions, and that's how it works. If they were ill for 2 days with something else, I would have given them 2 days off. It's just very
The
simple.
other question then comes even in a formal sector setup is that everybody is given fixed number of leaves,
Yeah.
right? So if you mandate or if you give or if you grant this menstrual leave, then women who actually avail of this can also avail of the other leave that they have, because it's not as if women have only menstrual cramps as their health problem,
Yeah.
right? You could get a flu, you could get whatever, dengue, whatever else you could get. So if you've already taken this as your menstrual leave and then you don't have any leave remaining, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So it would help other women to save their medical leave or other medical situation, and make it easier for them, such.
When I'd written about this a few years ago, my first instinct was that a woman takes a leave not just when she is ill, but also very likely when somebody else is ill
Else in the
in the
families.
family. She is the one who's expected to take a leave and take care of them. So I had always believed that women generally should be just given more leaves,
Until the
with
society corrects it.
non-popular opinion, but that women should generically be just given more leave without mandating them as menstrual or sick leaves. Because I think there's a judgment factor that comes from, are you taking a menstrual leave?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, actually. If you just give a certain number of extra leave to women, but I think it will come at a cost. Then who will bear that cost? And then what are the unintended consequences?
But I think if we can be rational about it, even sick leaves by themselves will come at a cost, right? I'm sure there are people around who think, oh, I've got 10 sick leaves left this year. Let me finish them,
Hmm.
right? Before they lapse and take leaves
They
and
fall
go.
sick.
Yeah. So it is not that it doesn't happen outside of the women's circle. So that yeah, there's no reason being coy about this.
Hmm.
The fact that we understand that women have more are supposed to be the caretakers at home as well. I think as a intelligent species, we should be able to rationally think about this and account for
Sure. Yeah.
it. But until we realize that we are the intelligent species, women will unfortunately get judged. And my biggest concern, and I think this is what the Supreme Court also said, is that if we mandate a leave, it will lead to companies biasing against hiring more women of a reproductive age. As someone who has benefited tremendously from the maternity leave policy, this was similar arguments that were made
Yeah,
for
yeah,
maternity leave as well. Um, and I've seen it in recruitment interviews, etc. I've seen it on social media that women of reproductive age have been asked
yeah. What
about
I
their
understand.
family plans.
Mm.
So while I'm not aware of any data on how much this has impacted women coming
Yeah,
into the workforce. I think there is data to show that maternity leave has helped women stay in the workforce after
true.
giving birth, baby. But I don't know how much it has actually impacted the recruitment of women itself. But I mean that data should be discernible if the government puts its mind to finding that data, at least from the industry. But that has been a concern that has been raised by multiple groups. That will it impact recruitment? If you get two CVs of a similar kind of stature, would you prefer the man because you know that they will take less leaves? Will that impact wage? Will men say that women are getting more leave, so the wage there should be a
Differential. Hmm.
wage difference in that? I really wish sometimes we would think about um, our jobs as part of our life,
Lives
not
and not our lives.
and not different from our lives. Like we are a society that functions, and the family plays as important a role as the economic output that you get from doing a job. Um, and
Hmm.
other, if we disconnect those two, what we'll probably see is people earning but completely like asocial, disconnected from reality. And we don't want, as a society, we don't want to go there.
Yeah, and even when we say that, oh, men will take less leave, I don't think that is, and that is again putting the men in a difficult situation, right? Why should why are we already making these reinforcing some stereotypes that men should be a certain way? It's also putting them on
Yeah,
a difficult position as such. So yeah, I mean, if uh, we have to think about this in a more dispassionate way firstly, and recognize there are differences, and all differences should be accommodated in some ways. That's where, and I think this judge or this Supreme Court judgment might not have done much for making changes there, but it has generally moved the needle on the conversation,
yeah,
and the conversation needs to carry on, and
yeah, I agree.
till we find
Yeah,
an appropriate
yeah.
ground, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I was still in college, this was a few years ago, but anyways, when I was still in college, I had friends whose parents or family used to make them, sit out of the house in their
Oh,
periods,
that's
uh,
that's that's so difficult to see.
or not, not come into the kitchen,
Kitchen.
etc., because of this impurity label. And in a society where I think some people at least still believe in that um, idea, it can be very difficult for women to go and have a conversation particularly with men in the workplace. And so that social change has to accompany a policy change. Just an imposition of the policy might actually backfire. And petitions like this one um, need to be made so that we keep on having that conversation, like you said, right? Because only that will drive the social change that this is just normal. This is not, there's nothing impure about it. Really don't need to lock up women because they're menstruating. And this is in cities, right? I mean, I grew up in Mumbai. It's not like I was in a village. In my village, women still don't come to work when they are menstruating. They will sit at home. They will lock themselves up until they bathe, etc.
Oh,
And that's very complicated. I remember many years ago, my uh, my mother was menstruating, and so my father was giving her a cup of milk, but he had held it and he like put it far from her, and then she had to go and take it. And it was just like I was like, this was my first experience of seeing this happen, right? And neither of my parents believe in this system. Okay, but just because they were in the village, they had to do this. It just happened that we were
and
in
they
the
have different utensils for that time of the.
yeah.
Hmm.
And I was like, what is
What's
happening,
going
right?
on?
And well, my parents are quite progressive. They don't do this. I
Hmm.
don't do this. Why is this happening? But if you think about those women, if you think about that culture setting, that needs to change. And I think even if the Supreme Court decision might not have come out in favor of the petition, it pushes the conversation. And I think that is what is really, really necessary.
Yeah, and even before we talk about leave or any of these things, I think we need to take a step back and see what is the menstrual health scene like. Okay, making menstrual products easily available, hygiene. I mean, even basic water and stuff like
Toilets
that.
and
And
sanitation.
toilets. Yeah, I mean, the first step we can actually mandate through a law. Maybe I think it's already mandated in some labor laws as such that you should have separate bathrooms. I mean, toilets for women, and make them. Just ensuring that maybe
Yeah,
like
there was a bill proposed last year, the menstrual hygiene bill, and I think that is really necessary. I mean, I don't understand why this is not covered under the right to life, because the number
yeah,
of women who suffer from diseases because of poor hygiene during those days is immense. I mean, it
yeah,
has really bad repercussions
on
onto
their
the
overall
health.
health.
Yeah, nutrition, for example, the fact that you can't have a woman locked up and not provide her proper food, etc. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
that parts of India which need to grow into the 21st century yet, I suppose.
Yeah. So until then, we need to keep this conversation at least going, I guess.
Yeah.
And let's see where this goes. I mean, we're going to be watching this space carefully. And
Yes, we should be. We should be. And I think even if the policy at some point of time gets made, we should not use it to assume that all of the other structural problems have been solved, especially the ones around menstrual hygiene and access to good products, access to sanitation, access to clean drinking water, right? Because it is very easy that the eminent people on Twitter who will champion this policy might not be able to see the real issues that others have. And so we might be able to gloss over some of those issues if we actually do get a policy. And it's very, very necessary, I think, for people like us to be able to champion the needs of everybody.
true. Finally, I mean, as a researcher, I want to throw it back on the research community to come up. I mean, we have to put some resources behind this to understand the problems, why it happens, and what can be done to alleviate pain. Because if we do that, then this entire conversation is mute. Is
Like I started with, I am very pro gene editing. So I think we can gene edit the pain out
now
of
my
it.
argument always has been that because it's a women's issue, there is not enough money that is being
I agree.
put behind this problem. If it was, I mean, anything else that the men had were suffering, by now we would have solved the problem.
We should have had a man on this podcast.
Yeah, we should have brought somebody right, to hear their views on this. Yeah, but yeah,
We work in a very liberal workplace, right? I mean, I can feel comfortable talking to any man at our office about menstrual pain. And yet,
and yet we didn't bring one on this. But yeah, I think if eventually it will come down to that research on women's health and hygiene and what we can do to
and
make it better.
I don't know if you know someone about this controversy around Meftal that
Yes.
happened a few months ago, right? And a lot of women use Meftal for period pain. And then suddenly this communication goes out that, oh, Meftal is bad, Meftal should not be used, etc. It raised a lot of concern in women. Unfortunately, those health communicators did not pay heed or maybe understood the implications of what they were saying for you know for the women. The always look at harms and benefits. And then eventually a lot of the doctors came out to say that no, you can still take Miftal for period pain. That is not where the problem is. But still, it must have caused anxiety.
Yeah,
And we cannot treat period pain with as frivolously as we sometimes do.
do. Yeah. And yeah, it's part of growing up. It's part of a woman's life. Just suck it up, bear with it, and carry on. That's
Yeah.
the attitude we
Yeah,
have.
the idea that because it is natural, it is meant to be just
Uh-huh.
live with it is not.
And you get the joy of giving birth for
Oh,
the
yeah.
pain that you go through. So
Yes.
one should not complain, is what we hear. But I think that we should disabuse ourselves of those kind of things. We should
Yeah.
work towards making it more easy for women. And let's see where this goes. And yep.
Yeah. Great. We will be keeping an eye on this, and we will let you know as things evolve.
And if you have some views on this, if you disagree with us, please let us know in the comments. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle at Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.